Better to have bad news that's true than good news that we made up. At least that's the philosophy we're going with this week as we come towards the end of 2023. Ed Blakely is a former Washington insider and now living in Sydney, Australia. My name is freelance journalist and author Sean Britton. Find us each and every week wherever you find good podcasts, as well as on Facebook and Patreon at USofEd. Firstly, in Gaza, following the pause we spoke about last week, the battle has resumed over the besieged Gaza Strip with what's been called the most intense fighting yet. Tanks have pushed into southern Gaza, and while some 600,000 people in the area are under evacuation orders, the United Nations says there's nowhere for them to go. Thoughts, Ed?
Well, this surprises me. I thought Hamas was on the run, and the issues that we were discussing were to be lighter, not worse. But apparently I was very wrong. And it looks now that this fighting is going to go on more intensely. The rationale for it seems to be that Hamas is still around and they're still lobbing bombs and a threat to Israel. So Israel's probably taken all of the international humility pie it can eat, and they want to clean this up before they have no friends left. And I think they're close to that, both cleaning it up and not having any friends left.
While we're on the subject of conflict, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that Russia is waiting on the US and Europe to waver in its support, while Democrats and Republicans debate sending more military aid. Biden has pleaded with Congress to pass aid measures, warning that a failure to do so would hand Putin a victory and embolden him to invade other European countries. What's happening, Ed?
Well, I think this is exactly as you put it. Why Biden just doesn't go to the Democrats, who would certainly get enough Republican votes to put this through, as long as it's coupled with Israel. The speaker is holding it back, but he only has a 4-vote majority now. And when Kevin goes, it'll be a 3-vote majority. So I think the time is right for Biden to push on the House, Democrats, to push this bill without any Republican leadership involved. Maybe McCarthy would come out of the proverbial House grave in Santos. But we have no. It's Easter where people rise, isn't it? But we have two graves. There is some danger that Bakersfield has been redistricted, and a Democrat might win that seat. Then there'd be a 2-vote majority. Can you govern with that?
I might circle back on a couple of those, but just briefly on gun violence in the States. Feels like we haven't talked about as many big headline-grabbing mass shootings this year, but slow and steady, they've been happening in the background. 38 shootings in which 4 or more victims were killed have occurred this year, the highest number since at least 2006, when I guess these things started being recorded in that specific way. That tops last year's previous record of 36. But as I say, a lot of these seem to be more private affairs than, the likes of the Pulse nightclub shooting, the 2017 Vegas shooting, or the Uvalde mass shooting. Any thoughts, Ed?
Well, it's the same problem, isn't it? The guns are bigger than the problem. If people were angry with one another, a couple of knives might end up in the hospital. But while people have these multi-shoot guns, they're going to kill a lot of people inadvertently. And there seem to be a lot of sick people in the United States,
Mm.
not happy with their own lives and willing to kill. I just don't know where this is going to end.
Let's talk Trump. Like I say, not a lot of good things to talk about this week. Maybe some good news, though. We've seen appeals denied, I understand, in New York and DC. And the gag order in the New York case has been reinstated. But that was not before he went after the wife of the judge in the New York fraud case, as well as the judge's law clerk, claiming the judge's wife had been sharing memes celebrating Trump going to prison, something which appeared pretty blatantly falsified. He's continued his attacks, however, even after the gag order was reinstated. What's happening, Ed?
Well, I think he's waiting for somebody to try to put him in jail. He doesn't care at this point. Uh, as we've said before, he's a madman and he's mad at the world. He's not getting support at home. His children have basically abandoned him. They won't testify for him in the New York case anymore. There is nothing for him to lose. And that's a terrible position to be in, isn't it?
Hmm. Meanwhile, with January 6th, the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has been releasing some 40,000 hours of footage from the day of the attempted coup. But the release has to be staggered, Ed, because Republicans, the party of law and order, are busy blurring the faces of those that took part in the riots, with Johnson saying, "We have to blur some of the faces of persons who participated in the events of that day because we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the Department of Justice." Now, obviously, investigators already had the unblurred footage. This is largely to stop civilian reporters recognizing people, sending in tips. But this is where we're at. Charges for criminal offences being labelled as retaliation.
That's against the law. He is violating the law. And somebody has to hold him accountable. You cannot hide criminals, can you?
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like the Republicans have no intention of doing legislation. It's dealing with their very unfavorable situation with respect to January the 6th and trying to get Biden. That's all they want to do. They have no other cause to celebrate, and they have no other reason to live. So like Trump, they're going to go down, and they're going to go down hard. Let's just hope that Democrats will kick them all out. Sure, I'd like to see somebody else run other than Biden, but I would vote for you before I vote for Trump.
I should think so.
By the way, Liz Cheney is talking about the possibility of running. Now, she wouldn't take any MAGA votes, but she certainly takes some Senate Republican votes. And there's no way of him winning just with MAGA votes.
While we're in the area, we should mention, as you alluded to before, Ed, there was the successful vote last week to expel George Santos. The vote 311 to 114, easily surpassing the 2/3 majority required for an expulsion. A little less than half of the Republicans in Congress joining Democrats to push him out. And on top of that, as you also mentioned, Kevin McCarthy has announced he will be retiring. The former speaker will be retiring at the end of this year. Any thoughts?
Well, I wish Kevin would stay because he allows people who have a few brains to say we have a leader, and they will be leaderless now. But he, like almost everyone in the Congress, is sick of what's going on. including many Democrats. So I expect a lot of resignations very soon. He's not alone. The Democrats have something going for them, though. They're the underdogs. The Republicans have nothing going for them.
And again, while we're in the neighborhood, what is happening with Hunter Biden? Republicans were all fired up to get him on the stand. You'd think if they believed he had something to genuinely damage his father, they would want him front and center in a public hearing. But when Hunter insists that's exactly what he'll do, he'll only testify in an open hearing, then Republicans have turned it down and pushed for it to happen behind closed doors. Golly gee, what could be happening here, Ed?
I'm not sure. I think they're going to have a vote on Biden before Christmas in the hope there's a potential for something to go their way. And I don't know what the Constitution has. Is it just a majority vote? I'm not quite sure how it works. But I think no matter how it works, the public has already heard what they've heard. There will be no significance to it. And they're just hurting themselves at this point. No one else.
And just finally, there was an opinion piece in the Post this week, kind of making the rounds through social media, and it claimed that a Trump dictatorship is increasingly inevitable. And look, I would have to agree with its assertions that the American public is perhaps too laissez-faire about the possibility, but that's not why I bring it up. Trump himself reposted a post with this opinion piece, seemingly in agreement. Yes, a dictatorship under him is a distinct possibility, and joked dismissively in an interview with Fox News' Sean Hannity that he would only be a dictator on day one of his presidency when asked whether he would use presidential powers for the sake of retribution, a comment that Hannity quickly tried to pave over. Ed, this feels like the evidence is right goddamn there. I mean, any thoughts?
There are no thoughts here. We've been saying this all year. There is nothing more to say. It's out there. He might as well say it and run the risk. He doesn't care if he goes to jail. He doesn't care about anything as long as he's standing alive. And no matter what happens in this election, he's going to declare himself the winner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fight would go on. I'm now much more in favor of getting him off the ballot.
I mean, just want to point out as well, Biden made comments this week suggesting, if Trump weren't on the ballot, he himself wouldn't be running in 2024. If it wasn't so likely Trump would be the candidate, he himself wouldn't run.
Well, let's hope neither one of them are running. I would vote for Liz Cheney in a minute.
Meanwhile, we've spoken about Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville and his standoff with the Biden administration due to Defense Department policies on abortion, holding up hundreds of military appointments, even drawing the ire of Republican colleagues. He has finally dropped the crusade, meaning these appointments can resume. But what are the implications here, Ed?
Well, getting these over the line before Christmas is going to be a present for the entire military. He hasn't dropped them all, though. The very top jobs, the chiefs of staff, he's still holding on to those. But those can be overridden anyway by a regular vote of the Congress. And there's already been a decision in the Senate to do that. So it's a bit of a Pyrrhic victory for him. He got his cause recognized, but there's two reasons the Republicans are upset about this. They will lose a lot of Southern white voters who are in the military. A lot of Southerners are in the military. And they've been fanning up a lot of steam. So even in his own state, it'll be lost. The second reason is he's just handed something to the Democrats related to abortion that will get them votes in other states. So Tommy, I don't know how he ever won any games in football because he certainly doesn't know strategy.
And the post-pandemic jobs boom in the United States appears to be over as openings fall to a 32-month low, which could be a very good thing for inflation. We could see inflation drop on top of this. Ed, what's the latest?
I think you nailed it. The way they count unemployment in the United States is people searching for jobs. Now, some people have quit searching for jobs because they've gotten jobs on the internet doing all kinds of things. I even have a couple of relatives doing this, making dresses and selling different things on the internet and making more money than they made before by going out to so-called real work. So I think there's a great possibility here that the work from home thing has hit a pace where people are looking to create work rather than find work. And you and I see it every day, particularly in your field, that there are people sending you messages that they can do programming for you. There are new websites emerging to do everything in the world, including physical health and fitness. And this is far more appealing than leaving home, getting on a bus, putting on fresh clothes, and going to a location. So I think the 4-day week is here for sure. There's no need to announce it. I also think there's something else that's going to happen. The search for good accommodation will continue, but I think the search for home ownership will be abated for two reasons. Home ownership, if you look at it over the long run, except in places like Australia, is not the big boom that used to be. Here, you buy a house for $1 million and sell it for $3 million. In the United States, you buy a house for $1 million and sell it for 1.3. If you put the same money in the stock market, you would have $2 million. So I think the competition for housing is changing and cooling, but the competition for accommodation is not. So I see a lot more rental accommodation going up, share accommodation going up, and mobility of the place from which you might want to work. What has not happened is people have not come back from Dubbo. They've got a job there. The towns are beginning to look a little bit better. They're sprucing up. You can come into the city quite easily once or twice a month. So I think we're finding not a reduction in jobs, but a change in jobs. And Americans aren't seeking jobs, they're making jobs.
And just finally, Ed, only the good die young. We're pretty late on this one, given it was announced only a couple of hours after we recorded last week. But infamous former Secretary of State and diplomat Henry Kissinger passed away last week at the age of 100. It's hard to imagine, I don't know, someone who as just a single individual had much more impact on world order post World War II. But it's not, obviously, he's not without his large-scale controversies. Any thoughts on Kissinger's legacy?
Well, every one of the world famous diplomats who has been involved in shaping world policy, they weren't kings or princes. They're the Metternichs and people like that. They're all questionable characters. And so I think Henry was a student of that kind of world diplomacy, balance of power diplomacy. And it'd be good if we had a couple more people like that again, because with weapons of mass destruction, balance has to be found. So I worked with Henry Kissinger when I was in the State Department in the White House. So I met him and knew him. Saw him when I was last at the University of Southern California, where he gave a speech and was very nice to me and said nice things about me. I didn't think he'd even remember me, but he sure as heck did. So he's a man of enormous mental capacities and long-term memory. We might not have very many more like him.
Ed and I will be back for another couple of weeks before wrapping up for 2023. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing, and check us out on Facebook. And if you'd like to support the podcast, Patreon at USofEd.